just so you guys know who I'll be calling on.
Okay.
All right. I think
my camera look okay? Or is it quite distorted?
What's that?
Does my camera look okay, or is it quite distorted?
I mean, it looks okay on my side.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, fine. Maybe it downgrades your internal bit.
So I think we're officially live. I don't know if we have people joining yet or not.
I don't even know where we see how many people are on the session.
Nor do I.
52 watching.
Okay. Oh,
Bottom left of your screen.
Ah, there's some folks joining. We're here. You are live.
We are live.
All right. Well, folks, welcome. What do you think, guys? Should we launch in? Do we give people another minute to join? Or do we just
straight in because people get
still saying 52? So let's
I think it's time to launch. Well, hey folks, welcome to this session. 3 leaders, 3 tech stacks. I am Chris White, founder and CEO of TechSalesAdvisors. Some of you may know me because I published a book called The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers. First of all, I want to say thank you to Consensus for putting on such a great program again. This is, I think, year number 4 of Demo Fest. And I hope you're having a great time. We're excited to have this conversation. And to be honest, we're going to have a little fun with this. So I'd like to give the leaders who are with us an opportunity to introduce themselves. Greg Wiley, I'm looking at you first, sir. Do you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, and thank you for getting my surname correct. You wouldn't believe how many people end up calling me Willie. But anyway, yeah, Greg Wiley. Hello, everybody. Delighted to be here. I work for Splunk as a sales engineering manager. I've been at Splunk for 9 years, but I've only been a sales engineering manager for about 2. So really happy to be here.
Excellent. Rob Dean, I see you next in the Hollywood Squares. Do you care to share next, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Hello to everyone that's joined us this evening. So I have a similar issue in that my parents gave me 2 first names for my name. So you can call me Rob Dean or anything else that takes your fancy, to be honest with you. So there you go. So I'm head of pre-sales at the Access Group. I've been with Access nearly a year now. And prior to that, I was pre-sales director at a company called Trintech. I've been in pre-sales for around 10 years now in a variety of positions, both as an individual contributor and also as leading pre-sales teams. So very much looking forward to a spirited debate this afternoon.
Oh, excellent. I know how to stir things up. So we'll see if we could do just that, Rob. And last but certainly not least, Rebby John. Rebby, do you care to share?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. In the theme, I am also a victim of a somewhat funky name. Rebby is an unusual name, and I'm sure everyone can see, but I answered to Remy or Ruby or Reddy or any other word starting with R that folks call me. But yeah, so I lead our global sales engineering team at Salesloft, both their commercial and enterprise sales engineering teams across those business units. Started my career in business operations, loved the problem solving side of that, and wanted to marry that with the customer facing skill set. And perfect role to do that is a sales engineer. So super excited to chat through that and the experience with technology, metrics, and everything automation today.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, guys. And folks, we do want to make this interactive. So throughout the time together, if you have any thoughts you care to share in the chat, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions that you care to drop in the Q&A, I'm going to invite you to do that as well. Guys, they've had a chance to at least get an introduction to us. I'm going to suggest that we get a feel for who's out there in the audience. So if anybody's attended one of my sessions before, I like to use a platform called Menti. We can invite people to actually join us on the poll here. So folks, if you care to participate, I'm going to invite you to do so. We had a few questions that we're going to ask the audience so we can get a feel for who's out there, who you are, etc. So to that end, I'm going to encourage you and invite you to open up a browser. You probably got a browser open, but go to menti.com and you can type in 5906-9515 if you care to participate, or you can get out your phone, take a picture of the QR code, and you can join us online there. And we're gonna ask a few questions. I see it looks like we've got a few people that are starting to flow in. So we're gonna take just a minute, give everybody a chance to join. And I don't know, guys, have you figured out how we can tell how many people are actually online? I actually don't think I have figured out how to tell how many people are actually with us. Have you figured that out yet?
Yeah, Chris, you've got it right on the bottom left of your video if you hover the mouse over the video. So we've got 51 watching right now.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Excellent. Ah, super. All right. So let's wait a few. I want to give this another minute, folks. We would just love to know who's out there. We got a few questions in this poll. So if you're at all inspired to do so, I'm going to invite you to join. The better we understand who you are, the more relevant we can make this conversation. So normally, if I was doing this in Zoom, I think I could freeze the screen so I could leave that up and just go to the poll. But I don't know if we know. Is there a way to pause? I don't know if there's a way to pause the frame. All right. Actually, is there? Right? Is that a pause? All right, that's right. Let's just forge ahead. I don't want to spend too much time. So let's see who we've got out there so far. So first question, what best describes your role? Pre-sales individual contributor, pre-sales leader, sales enablement. All right, of the people who have joined, okay, so we've got at least one sales enablement. All right, some of the answers are starting to come in here. I wonder if there's a way to show. All right. Well, we're taking a small sample set here. So we've got some individual contributors, some leaders, we got a couple other. How large is your pre-sales organization? How large is your pre-sales team? All right. Okay. So we've got quite a few that are less than 20, a few 20 to 50. All right, guys, so this at least gives us an idea of who we're dealing with. We've got some more on the smaller side, but some in the middle. All right. How is your organization, or has your organization invested in pre-sales tooling or tooling and automation specifically aimed at pre-sales? All right, so a little bit of a mix here. And now the yeses are outweighing the nos. All right. So now that the yeses are definitely outweighing the nos. It's a little bit of a mix. So we still have a mix. Again, this is just, we'll assume this is sort of a subset. Is your organization considering an investment in pre-sales automation and or tooling? Yes, within 6 months. Not sure. No. Okay, but still weighted towards yes within 6 months to 12 months. All right, good. So clearly for those people, this is relevant. And then one final question. My colleague and I, Kerry Sokolsky, he and I did a buyer's guide, a pre-sales buyer's guide about a year ago, and we defined some different categories: pre-sales oversight, pre-sales opportunity and execution, demo automation, and then RFX management. These were the categories where we were primarily seeing tools and automation. So the question is given the categories listed below, where is your organization most likely to invest? So what are some products that might be in that first one? Maybe Vivint, Home Run, demo automation is Consensus. There's a number of others. All right. So guys, this at least gives us an insight into who the audience is, who's out there. So hopefully we can sort of steer some of our thoughts, some of our comments toward what we have. Folks, thanks for participating in that. So I'm going to put the first question out on the floor, and I'm going to invite whoever cares to jump in first. Please do so. Why do we need tooling and automation to begin with? Why do we, as sales engineer teams, pre-sales teams, why do we need something different and unique to begin with? Who wants to take that first?
I'm happy to go. I don't know whether you can hear me, whether I'm any clearer.
You're good on this side, Greg.
Okay, cool. So the way I look at this, and actually just interesting from the poll perspective, I guess some of the people that took the poll should have been on this panel rather than me, but we'll come to that, I'm sure. The way I look at this, though, is where automation and technology can help really is for efficiency and scale, and then data capture. Those are the three things that I think about and that I use technology for in my role here at Splunk. Things like efficiency, it's all about making it easy to find information for people. Certainly in our organization, there's a lot of information and I'm sure this is a story that probably resonates with many other organizations, but we have it in lots of different repositories. So we need to try and make that easy to find and surface the up-to-date relevant information quickly and easily. And I also think about that from a, what does my team need as the individual contributors on the front line? And then what do I need in order to be efficient in managing the team? Mm-hmm. And then what do my leaders above me also need, and how do they get to that easily? The second point was scale, and this is where a lot of the automation, I suppose, comes in. That a lot of people are already, beginning to investing. But how can we use technology and automation so that we can do more with either the same number of people or with fewer people, as might be the case? How can we service more leads? More prospects? How can we service our customers better and at scale? And then the final point was on the data capture side. Technology is great, but only if it makes it really easy and trivial to capture the information that we need, and that it produces what I like to think of as unambiguous results. So what I mean by that is inputs into the data capture need to be not open to interpretation. We have a homegrown solution for activity tracking, and you wouldn't believe the amount of interpretation there is in terms of, does this activity go in this category or that category? And if you've got people filling in information differently, then the metrics that spit out of the back end start to become meaningless. So data capture needs to be really produce unambiguous results, but it needs to be really easy to use in the first place. So that's the way I look at these things.
Love it, Greg. Efficiency, scale, data capture. Rebby, how about you? What would you add to that list?
Yeah, I like to kind of go off of a couple of things that Greg said there, especially around efficiency. It's important to remember that investments in the pre-sales organizations are large. Pre-sales is a very expensive resource for the company, right? And in order to make sure that we're stewarding those resources well, it's all about how can we make our team most effective with the team that we do have. So any ability to automate low impact, high effort activity, things of that nature is going to be top of mind. So, one thing that comes to mind there is, even thinking about things like demo data, which I know is a top of mind concern for many folks. The more that we can do to automate that, the less time that our pre-sales organization is investing there. That takes away the time from their spending in customers. It's also really important to be able to tie those efficiency improvements to very specific business results, right? James, I saw you put in the chat that, it's taken a while to negotiate contracts for SE tooling. The more that we can tie SE tooling back to very specific results that the business cares about, the more that we can get the financial approval necessary to get something done. And then on the data capture side, I also totally agree with that point. Honestly, you need a lot of those fundamental SE activity pieces in place in order to make the business case for related tooling often, so that you can show that, if we get this tooling, will drive X% win rate increase, or, X hours saved that allows us to save on headcount in the future. Things of that nature is hard to get to if you don't have the unambiguous data. Greg, I like the way that you put that, the unambiguous data that you can lean on.
And I love the example he gave too. Just simple, something that seems as simple as activity tracking, right? Yeah. Not that easy to avoid the unambiguous results and interpretations, right? Rob, anything else you would add to the list?
I think this is an interesting question to ask at this stage, because pre-sales, or call us what you will, is genuinely a profession now. So it means that technology is being embraced across the gamut of what we do. So my simple mind, I like to compartmentalize as much as I can. So when I think about technology and the way we use it in our profession, is that we are looking at it from a buyer-centric, commercial-centric, and a developmental-centric perspective. Buyer-centric technology is something that now it's evolutionary for all of us, because it means that what we can do as pre-sales is move both left and right in the sales motion. And that's really critical to what the buyer enablement paradigm has brought to the table. It means that we have an ability to affect outside of our usual role. When we think about it from a commercial perspective, metrics and everything come into that, but equally being able to create visibility around the impact and outcomes that we're driving as a pre-sales organization to our sales colleagues, to our marketing colleagues, to our CS colleagues, that's so important now. So anything that we do, taking automation aside for one moment, is that we need to be able to direct information back to the business that shows the impact and outcome that we're driving. When I talk about developmental, I mean that in the context of, are we able to use technology that makes us better on a day-to-day basis? Now, that might be from an automation standpoint, but it might be as simple as things like AI tooling that allows us to do better things around presentations, around simple things like Zoom It, allowing us to do better demo techniques and stuff like that. So I think it's a very wide question, and it's really difficult to say no to any part of this. But the bigger question now is, as a profession, where do we apply the pressure, and where do we apply the efforts and energies to make sure that we're doing the right things to create the right outcomes?
Well said.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say on that theme, Rob, I love the point of sharing and socializing the impact of the pre-sales org. I think not only because it's important to keep all the stakeholders informed, but then often what we're doing on the pre-sales side can inform decisions on the customer success, services, et cetera side. So the more that we can do to socialize that data across the business, the better. Yeah.
So I want to weave together something that really all of you said. Rob, you were mentioning where do we focus? And Greg, you said there are certain tools or capabilities that the team might benefit from. There are certain tools or capabilities or automation that I, as the SE leader, might benefit from. And then there are certain maybe tools, metrics that my leadership might benefit from. And they might not be either the same capability. So how do we decide where to invest if it's not a one size fits all?
That's a great question. Great question. We have to find some method of identifying the most important need. I think I can give an example of something that we have done. We were finding that as one of Salesloft's priorities a few years ago was to really focus on moving up market. And we've been able to do that successfully. And one of the things that happens when you move up market is just a much more stringent RFP security review process, things of that nature. So we had our headcount modeled in such a way that didn't account for all of the additional hours that we were going to be investing in the security review and RFP processes. And so at that point in time, it made most sense for us to make an investment in technology that would allow our team to be most efficient there. So while it didn't have a very direct result on, what a leader did day to day or a revenue leader did day to day, it was going to be a big value driver for the SE and their role. And that was where we made an investment. So I think it really just goes to what's top of mind for the business and the strategic priorities, and what unblocks the revenue and unblocks the efficiency to get to that overarching strategic priority.
I mean,
Love
for me,
that.
I'm going to repeat a lot of what you probably heard Adam Freeman talk about earlier today, right? Everything that we do, whether it's an investment in technology or otherwise, is based on an impact and outcome to the business. Effectively, anything that we're trying to invest in means that we're either trying to scale, we're trying to be able to deliver information back to the business around what we're accomplishing or what the impact we're having. And then finally, are we able to try and reduce things like our CAC? Are we trying to improve our efficiency, productivity ratios, things like that? So in reality, everything that we do, from using a CRM to, delivering automation in the context of things like consensus, every business case or every rationale behind that is based on us being able to move the needle or move the dial. Even marginal gains make such a big impact on the business. So everything now has to be tied to an impact or an outcome. So irrespective of what the technology does, ultimately it's got to move the needle in some respect.
Completely agree. Greg, did you have a thought before I move to the next tough question?
Well, I'm just thinking about what you're saying there, Rob, and it's absolutely right. When we're presenting our solutions to our customers, that's exactly what we're trying to show. And I think I think the difficulty sometimes that I see, at least at my level in my role, is sometimes it can be really hard to sort of quantify what that might be. And so trying to get to that is I would find challenging. And so if anyone of you or anybody in the audience have got tips on that, I'm all ears. We have trialed various automation tools, but we've not yet actually bought any, and we have built some of our own. I think we actually do okay, but I don't think anyone's got a real grasp of exactly what is that impact that's going to be made. How are we actually going to quantify that? Whether that's in hours saved, doing more with less, increasing the technical win, shortening the sales cycle. There's all those kind of metrics that we think it's going to prove, but it's going to take. And I know this is a question that's coming up later on, but how long is that going to take from when we make that initial investment to getting the return on that investment? I think that's, for me at least, where I sit, that's a difficult thing to measure.
Indeed. Let's talk about quantify. You used the word quantify, and we've been talking about business results. We've been talking about impact. What are the metrics that you as SE leaders are currently using to measure and demonstrate the impact and the business results that your team is delivering to the organization? Rebby, I'm going to you first with this one.
Yeah, for sure. We have a few that we track. And once we, at the end of every quarter, we actually do a report on these metrics and socialize it with the business. Again, kind of going back to what Rob, you were speaking about. But we look at a few. We look at the revenue that has been influenced by a sales engineer. We call them sales engineers at Salesloft. Obviously, we'll look at this as an individual basis. Both this and all the other metrics I'll list out here on an individual basis for performance reviews, growth and development sessions, things of that nature, and then also as an aggregate level to make decisions around teaming and headcount and things of that nature. But yeah, so revenue influenced, win rate with a sales engineer and win rate without a sales engineer to quantify the impact there, the impact to ACV, so ACV with and without a sales engineer, and then finally attach rate. So how many deals is an SE involved with based on the pipeline that we have, and we look at attach rate for deals that are past the discovery stage, because we typically want the SE joining after the rep has done the initial qualification, but then also a substantial amount of discovery. So That's on one side in terms of business outcomes. And then we also look at just activity metrics. This is something that we've honestly had challenges with. Greg, going back to what you were referring to as ambiguity in what the activity tracking actually means. One activity type means something different to do different SEs often, and then we don't always have the best adoption because, again, going back to efficiency, it's a pretty high effort, low impact for an SE to take time out of their day to log activity when they're focused on the next customer presentation or RFP or whatever it is they've got going on that day. But we do track it. We need to get better at it. And then we also look at product feedback that the team is logging. The SE organization at Salesloft plays a big role in serving as a liaison, the voice of customer between the revenue org and product. And so we expect the SEs to log the product feedback through an internal process based on what they're hearing out in the field. So we look at those 5 metrics: ARR, win rate, attach rate, ACV, and then activity and product feedback. Those 6.
Excellent. Rob, how about you?
I break these things down into, again, 3 categories. I like the power of 3. I can't remember who coined that, but activity is a key one for me. And I came to this from a book recommendation, which was Cracking the Sales Management Code. It's really for sales people. We're all in sales, but rather than SEs. But I found it really useful, and it was recommended to me actually by somebody, Diane Capello, on the Presales Collective. But I urge you to just take a look at it, actually, because it's the only thing as managers that we can really influence, and they're leading indicators. What is my team doing? And so I track a lot of that. And one of the things, Rebby, to come back to that point about ambiguity, is to overcome that, I sort of aggregate things into sort of really 2 or 3 buckets. One is the activity customer focused? And that means not just in front of the customer or virtually in front of the customer. That is, if I'm answering an RFP, that's a customer focused activity, even though I'm not necessarily in front of the customer. Then I look at, are my team doing training and enablement? Are they upskilling themselves? And then I look at internal activities, which is probably potentially, not always, but potentially wasted hours maybe, or hours that could be used more productively. So that's the first thing, activity. Then I look at things like control. What I mean by that is control of I suppose, the sales funnel, the opportunities in front of us. So that's things like technical win status versus the sales stage that opportunities are in. The opportunity, technical next steps, and technical risk, have they been updated? Is there a technical activity plan? So I look at those things. And then I also look at, has the SE got an enablement plan for themselves? Are they doing that upskilling? Are they spending that time upskilling themselves, keeping themselves up to date? Because those sorts of things tend to be more leading type indicators, rather than looking at attach rates and revenue and that sort of thing, which tend to be a little bit more lagging. I do look at those things as well, but they become more important, when I'm looking at recognition and so on at the end of the year, and how have we all done, that sort of thing. But key in terms of driving the team and looking for where I can improve efficiencies, where automation and technology might be able to help, is more around the activity and control side of things.
Excellent. Rob, any thoughts from you, sir?
So I think it's important when you look at metrics as to why you're using KPIs in any form, right? And I'm going to probably repeat something. So there's no surprising anyone that saw Adam's session earlier today, right? In reality, we're looking for both leading and lagging indicators. And we're also looking to ensure that we have both financial and non-financial KPIs. And that means that we can look at it from the perspective of both performance, but also engagement. So with that being said, there are things like the usual financial KPIs that we look at. So things like closed won ratios. We look at things like efficiency productivity ratios. We look at win rates with and without pre-sales, all of that kind of stuff that gives you almost a pulse check on the performance of the team and the individual. But we also look at things like social selling indexes. So what are people doing in the social world? And from a learning culture perspective, what are people doing from an objective or goal perspective that they're doing to improve their own self-development and increase their learning curve and things like this. And that goes from onboarding right through to tenured individuals who are continuing to look to improve what they're doing. And that in itself, I think, gives you much more of a leading indicator into potential future performance versus how somebody is potentially performing in year or in quarter, for example. So I think those metrics for us, they span across both non-financial as well as financial, but also those that are an impact or relevant to performance, but also the engagement of the individual, as well as leaders within the group. So looking what leaders are doing with their teams. So it's not just around an individual contributor, but also managers within the group who are looking after a team or team leaders. How are they managing their team? What are the sort of things that they're doing to improve as a leader for their team and things like this?
Fabulous. Guys, allow me to press our own pause button just for a moment. Folks, we're talking about technology, tech stacks for pre-sales, metrics. If you have any comments that you care to share, please to enter them in the chat. If you have any questions for these gentlemen, I invite you to share those as well. We're happy to address any questions to the field. Guys, we've been talking about metrics, and we've talked about some of the things you're looking at, some of the ways in which you're using these metrics. Let's turn the conversation slightly towards technology. So what technologies, what processes are you using, to capture the information and potentially either to use it for decision making or roll it up to the leadership team? Who wants to take this first? Rebby, I see you nodding your head. I'm inspired to look in your direction first.
For sure, yeah. So we operate relatively light on tech. We're always looking for more ways to automate and find efficiencies. But what we have right now has been working. Our first investment in sales engineering specific technology was on the RFP side, as I mentioned earlier. So we're using HyperComply there to automate basically a first pass at our security reviews and RFPs that come through. And then we use on the demo automation side to make our team more effective there. We use or less demo automation. That's what Consensus plays in, but more so like creating demo data. So a different product, different kind of space. We use Salesloft, and what they do is effectively populate fake activity data within our demo environment, so that all the beautiful analytics and graphs and all those things in Salesloft look good when we're showing them to a customer. And then across our revenue organization, we use Seismic as our content repository, although the SE team probably isn't the best users of Seismic, and we go back and forth between a lot of different places where we have SE specific collateral. So those three are the ones that SEs are obviously most often interacting with, or Salesloft, HyperComply.
Rebby, I'm curious. I'm going to invite Greg and Rob to share as well. But while you said that, I'm curious, is given the fact that you're not using too many tools in particular for pre-sale, do you feel the need? Do you feel a draw? Do you feel there's maybe some gap there, and you just haven't had a chance to really focus in that area, or you just don't necessarily feel that there's a gap or need for you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I think as we've continued to grow, we've started feeling some pains more. One is in the activity tracking arena, where we're currently using a homegrown process, but again, it's time consuming for the SE to actually go in and make it happen. And we haven't seen the best adoption, and there's ambiguity of data. That's one. And then the other thing that I'd point out too is, as we think about scaling demos and demo automation on that side, that's something that we've looked at in the past before. Obviously, we've done a couple demos of Consensus and such, and it hasn't been as much of a pain. But in this environment, it's so important that we're investing our resources really efficiently into the most qualified opportunities so that we can really focus on bringing those ones down. And that's something that a demo automation tool can certainly help out with. So I'd say the biggest area where we're feeling that pressure though right now is on the activity tracking side.
Yeah, interesting. Well, and the automation touches on the scale that Greg mentioned, right? So, and we all feel the need to scale. Rob, how about you? What is your organization currently and or you specifically currently using in terms of tools, process, technology, et cetera, for either capturing information, automation, publishing, metrics, et cetera?
So Access tend to drink our own champagne quite a lot due to the portfolio of solutions that we have. We've got stuff within our solution set that we can use. I'm also going to point to the fact that as pre-sales people, we love to play with technology, and therefore we're very keen to create our own solutions to things, right? Because that's what we do. We love to solve problems. And so a lot of the situation we've got to where we're looking at activity tracking through Salesforce, looking to have dashboards that are taking data out of Salesforce to drive visibility around the way those activities are visible to the entire team, how we're trying to gamify that sort of thing for the team. All that stuff is very much homegrown, right? Very much homegrown. Clearly, we're a Consensus customer, and the way that we're embracing Consensus now is not just in the traditional way around demo automation. It's also around how do we use this as part of our upstream and downstream impact, because obviously pre-sales now is moving both left and right in terms of the sales pipeline. So, we're trying to make impact there. From an automation perspective, look, activity tracking is still one of those things that is time consuming, unfortunately. It's one of those areas that if we could automate that a lot more, and I know there are CRM tools out there that are creating APIs with things like Outlook and other Microsoft type technologies that are going to potentially enable us to track an opportunity, the people involved on that opportunity, the events that happen on that opportunity, and tie that back to things like activities much more seamlessly than having to do a very manual process as we do right now. So that's kind of where we are from that perspective. Obviously, we have a lot of dashboarding, again, that's kind of done through our own technology set and has been created by my counterpart, Andy Stephen, over the years. So, he's been a huge part of that. In reality, we have a very light technology stack in terms of the number of different vendors that we're involved with, much because we either, as I said, use our own internal solutions, or we're creating solutions to things like the need for pre-sales requests using things like Microsoft Bookings and stuff like that, and then using Power Automate, things like that. So actually, we're creating process efficiency using more of the day-to-day tooling rather than going out for specific vendors that are selling into pre-sales at this time.
Excellent. And by the way, I see in all the organizations I work with, they tend to patchwork together different homegrown tools and processes, because you're right. We're problem solvers. We're just going to find the path of least resistance and do it ourselves, right? And sometimes to our own detriment. Greg, do you care to share your process and tools?
Yeah, and I like what Rob said there, because we have a number of homegrown solutions because people like to tinker, and I think Splunk is a people-rich organization, particularly in the pre-sales organization, and so we've developed these tools probably before a lot of the current crop of tools, pre-sale specific tools, were coming to market. So we did we talk about at Splunk, or we used to talk about at Splunk, a doocracy. So if something was missing, someone would just go and do it, and build it, and that's how these things came about. And there's been a lot of love and attention put into those things, and people are now used to using them. And I'm not saying that they're good or bad, but they get used, right? One of the things, though, that we have done with our activity tracking tool is that we flipped over from using Microsoft Exchange for email to Gmail, and so it has an easy Gmail integration where we can just sort of, the SEs can just click in and their calendar appears in it, and they can just say, yeah, these are my activities, and that makes it, you know, really simple. And it goes to that what I said earlier about you've got to make these things really simple to use and seamless, so you know you're not putting resistance in the way of someone doing these things. You know, Splunk, we are a data company, so we have to drink our own champagne, as Rob was saying. So we do use Splunk to sort of do a lot of the tracking and dashboards of these things. One of the things that we struggle a little bit with, as I alluded to earlier, was around the efficiency area, is we have multiple repositories for information, whether that's in Google Drive or it's in Salesforce or it's in Slack and things like that, you know. But we have invested in a tool called Guru, which I suppose is a meta collateral repository, in that you can surface where information is through that tool, and it integrates well with Slack, and it also forces people to review whether that information is still relevant and up to date. So that's a nice little tool that we do use. And as far as demos, you know, we are not a consensus customer yet, at least anyway, but we do have our own demo platform, again, homegrown, some links into Salesforce to allow us to track certain things. That's the technology side of things. But one of the things that you asked in the question is around the sort of techniques. One thing that I was going to mention earlier on when we were talking about metrics, you know, one of the techniques I use is I share those metrics in things like sales QBRs with the teams that we support, to sort of, so that they're aware. And that's often, you know, sometimes they're a little bit surprised when I start to share these metrics. And I think it just makes people buy in more to sort of what we're doing, and it exposes as particularly to the their sales leadership around what we do. So that's a technique that I use. The other thing is, and you know, going back to that sort of unambiguity piece, is, you know, just being really clear on why we're doing things. Why are we introducing, whether it's a new technology, a new process, you know, what's in it for the sales engineer, as to why are we asking for this information? You know, what's in it for them? Why is it going to benefit them? It's easy to see why it might benefit me and my leadership, but it's less obvious sometimes why it's going to benefit the sales engineer. Why are we putting this process, this technology, this resistance in the way of the sales engineer doing their job, or what they perceive as doing their job? So yeah, being really clear, I think, is a really important aspect of all of this discussion, for my money at least. Anyway.
Well, and as a sales engineer leader, I mean, that's one of our sales jobs, right? If we need to put some of these processes, some of these gates in place, right, we need to understand, we need to think through, well, what's in it for them. We usually know what's in it for us and or our leadership. I was inspired to ask this question in terms of reporting to leadership, to sales leadership, to executive management. Do you find it's more of a pull or a push? Meaning, are you being asked for numbers? Are you being asked for justification, or is it more an initiative on your part to sort of more proactively provide the information to build the justification for the team, or is it a little bit of both?
For me specifically, it is a bit of both, right? But when I say I share the metrics in QBR, that's a push from me. And what I found is that the sales teams find that really valuable, and so they've asked me to keep doing that. But my own leadership, I'm sure we all have to deal with the fire drills that I need this information, I need it now, and then we have to scrabble to pull it all together. But then I built lots of Salesforce reports and metrics, which actually help my leadership out in terms of putting together things like what pipeline generating activities are the SEs involved in, because no one seems to know how that looks. So some of it is a bit of a pull, but some of it's a push as well.
Excellent. Rob, Rebby, any thoughts?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Rob.
No, go ahead, Rebby. Go on. You go ahead.
Yeah, it depends on the use case for the data. Definitely a push pull. For example, if we're doing like the QBRs, things of that nature, it's always a push. However, if we're making an ask of the business around changing ratios, adding on headcount, acquiring new tooling, then it's often a pull. There's specific data points and justifications that operations or finance wants visibility into. So depending on the use case for the data and what decisions we're trying to make from it.
It's quite interesting for anyone that knows anything about Access. We have a very rich portfolio of solutions, and the company has a whole variety of divisions who focus on different verticals and some horizontal spaces. And I think it depends on the product type, the solution type, and who you're selling to, that makes the difference in terms of the types of sales leaders you're interacting with as to whether it's a pull or push requirement. So when I think to kind of from a personal perspective between myself or my colleague Andy, we're in a situation where very much some of those sales leaders and the commercial leaders in those solution organizations or the divisions are very much looking for us to bring that to them because they're really interested to hear about it. Some, it's much the other way. We're having to almost justify the impact that we can have and take the information to them. So to Rebby's point, it's based on the use case. I think it very much depends on the style and type of sales leader you're dealing with, and also what the organizational culture is like a lot of the time. And because we're going through and continue to go through a number of acquisitions, that varies based on the type of acquisition, whether it's something that tends to have not had pre-sales in the past and has been very much a sales-led kind of freemium product-led growth type solution, versus one which is enterprise, where pre-sales has been integral to every opportunity that's ever been closed in that organization. And on that basis, it very much depends on how much you want to present up to those sales leaders and how much is being driven by them.
Indeed. And I think Michael, if I'm saying it right, Labosco said something about that in the chat, that it, whether we're up market, down market, right, that might dictate the complexity and the need for technology. I want to go back to something Greg said a moment ago, which is in essence selling the teams on following a process, using whether it's CRM or anything else. Do you find at times that it's difficult to get the teams to track their activity a certain way or sort of fall in line? And if so, have you learned any tricks, or do you have any advice for people that maybe are just beginning to impose some process on their teams?
Go on, I'll bite. I ended up having to write a document specifically saying how to track your activity, which was interesting, still used to this day, actually. And the other thing that I'm fairly old school, so the whole Slack thing, it was all a bit new to me when we introduced it. Well, I guess 3 years ago or so now. So I've only just found out about workflows, and my team must be sick of me, right? Because I've now created workflows to remind people to do this sort of thing. I'm not sure that's the right approach, though, really. But that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Often it's just nag. They'll know when they're not updated because on things like that. Because if I'm sat in forecast calls, and they'll get Slack messages from me saying, I need an update on this now, sort of thing. And that's it's not a great place to be. And they don't like it either. So that's the way at the moment.
I think there's an important piece here. And I think when we talk about these sort of things, because that data is so important to being able to show an impact and an outcome of what we're actually doing and how we're driving the business forward, you have to build it in from day zero. So it has to be part of the onboarding. It has to be part of the ramping. It has to be almost a cultural element to that your pre-sales organization. So it's not like it becomes something that's a surprise or it's seen as a policing action. It's something that is impactful to the team and to the business at large. I'd say the one thing that Access have done incredibly well from an activity tracking perspective is make it visible to the team. And the reason that's so important is because everyone can see what everyone else is doing, and it creates that innate competitiveness within the team and the different teams that we have within our organization. But it also means that, there's an element of fun to it. I know that sounds a bit trite, but I mean that sincerely, that actually, because people are competitive in the team, they actually want to be able to show how well they're doing, and they want to be able to log that in the right way, because the approach that we take is that this is part of their personal and professional development. It's all very much visible. There's some reward and recognition that comes off the back of doing all of this as well. And we also make sure that they're aware that it actually goes up further than simply myself or Adam, who I report to. It goes to the executive committee, who can then see the direct impact that we have across the entire business. How much revenue are we as pre-sales contributing to? And if we need to up resource, or we need to increase our skilling, or if we need to increase what we need team, then having an ability to show impact is really important.
Yeah. So in essence, I mean, to a certain degree, you're gamifying it a little bit and creating a little bit of friendly competition on the team.
Actually, I have a question about that, if you don't mind me interrupting here for Rob, actually, because you mentioned gamification earlier on. And can you expand a little bit more on that? Is something that we're just starting to play around with here?
Yeah, happy to take it offline as well, and probably bring one of my colleagues in who's probably got a much better handle on how it's all been set up. But ultimately, we index and score activities in a certain way that go into effectively an achievers board. And so they can see on a quarterly basis how well they're doing against one another. And as part of that, they get to go to a special dinner or lunch at the end of that quarter, which recognizes, the right performance and behaviors and engagement of individuals across the sales and marketing organization. So it's actually a big part of kind of the reward and recognition. So that when I talk about gamification, it's more in the context of giving that visibility so people know that there's an impact of them actually going above and beyond. That's what we're doing with that.
Cool. Yeah, I might take you up on that offer, take that offline. And thanks.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's really interesting to hear about, how we can also think about, what activities in our metrics and our data that you're weighting as, more important and higher impact to the score, to the aggregate score, versus the lower impact activities, and then figuring out ways to automate the lower impact.
Yeah, and it's interesting with things like that, because as we've seen things like video and now things like more experiential digital assets that we're creating that have a it's not necessarily an opportunity bearing activity tied to it, but it can have an impact across multiple opportunities. As we start seeing how does an individual activity impact more than one opportunity and the outcome of that opportunity, that's a big driver, because it means that you could spend an hour on doing a demo or a discovery call for a customer or prospect, or you can spend an hour doing a really cool video or tour, to name something nice for Mr. Green and his colleagues at Consensus, right? The tours piece. It's great. You can create something immersive that could even be used upstream to drive MQLs and things like that. So how we can impact the business now, because of the nature of the buyer enablement paradigm and that digital element, is expanding significantly. So that way we can index and change the indexing on those sort of activities.
Yeah. Fabulous. So guys, you're getting off pretty easy, because I don't see any questions in the Q&A tab there. So we've got about 6 or 7 more minutes. So I was inspired by, I thought of a few questions that I'm going to ask sort of in lightning round fashion that you didn't see coming. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. Question number 1, if you could wave your magic wand and create a tool that would do something for you and or your team, solve one problem or satisfy one need, fit one niche, what might that be?
Demo sites.
Demo site.
Everything related to demo sites and demo data. Something that just would magically create them and simplify them and change the data as you wanted them to, and all that kind of stuff. That would be amazing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And by the way, there might be some out there that do that a little bit. So, all right. So Rob's got demo sites.
Yeah.
Who's next?
For me, it would be activity tracking, but then also something that spits out, that just automatically ingests based on what's on a calendar and not on a calendar, what an SE does, in their 8 hours. But then also spits out based on the highest performing SEs that are closing the biggest deals and doing all the right things. This is the right activity makeup that goes into, achieving the technical win in a deal cycle. So really, if I can very quickly and easily get to that insight, like what is it that the best SEs do every single time in the biggest deal cycles that close, and have a tool automatically capture that data and spit out that recommendation, that's top on the wish list.
Awesome. Love it. Greg.
Yeah, I'm going to have to, this might be a cop-out, but I'm going to agree with Rob. I think that demos are, I'm going to group things together. Demos, workshops, and POVs, really. Combining all of those things into one simple platform. So when we talk about the buyer enablement, the buyer journey, that we've got one platform that services from when the leads first come in, the SDRs, those automated demos through to we run a lot of workshops to help with things like hands-on the product, so familiarity exercises, as well as workshops that help with customers on their adoption journey with our technology, with our solutions, and then the POVs as well, which kind of largely are sort of almost more slightly bespoke POV workshops, frankly. So I think I'm going to go with Rob's demo site, but expand it to not just demos, workshops, and POVs as well.
Love it. Final question. We have time for just brief answers. Look inside your crystal ball. What do you see for the future of pre-sales targeted, pre-sales focused technology and tools and automation, if anything?
We can't say AI here, can we? Because I mean, there's a number of other talks. I think
sure you can. I mean, maybe that's it.
I think it's, again, a little bit of a cop out going back to what Rob and Greg said. It's AI in the demo creation and customization. If we can use AI tooling to spit out a beautiful demo for a very specific prospect or account, that's something that would be huge.
I will be serious for a sec. Sorry, Rob. I'll let you speak first. You haven't spoken yet. Go.
I was going to say I'd like to turn it on the head and say that actually I think we'll see technology that will be available for the buyer that is relevant to the way that they are going to see how effective a piece of technology has been and the time to value that they're going to get, rather than it being something that impacts us. And it's something that we might feed into.
So I'll add on to that, because what I was going to say was, and putting those together with AI is actually things like, using AI to support things like helping customers sort of, adopt our technology, self-service support, that sort of thing. That I think AI is just going to help with that. That is going to alleviate a lot of pressure on SEs that also have to support sort of post-sale sort of account adoption type activities.
Excellent.
I've just seen Mark's put a question in the Q&A section that was effectively what I just said. So Mark, the answer is yes.
So we've literally got a minute left. There was one question from Tom in SE feedback from sales. What questions do you ask them to respond? You each probably have 10 seconds to share a question if you've got one.
I don't yet ask for direct feedback. It's usually just in water cooler conversations, to be honest.
Rob,
yeah, we're rolling out a process soon that will use Google Forms, and we basically ask about things like SE best practices around accessibility, preparation, things of that nature. And then also, what are they doing really well? How can they improve basic things?
Awesome. Rob, final word.
Yeah, it's still an area of focus for us, but we tend to use some of the inherent MS bookings and forms and things like that for any of those types of surveys, because you can use Power Automate with them.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you. We're done. I think we're off stage. I think we go off stage when the clock strikes 12.
That's it. We're done.
Great.
Thanks, guys. I had some fun with that. I hope you did.
Good chat. Yeah, it was very good. Very good.
That was a great chat.
Good.
Appreciate
Excellent.
the debate thoughts from everybody.
Yeah, it was good. Really good.
We should all try and get together for a virtual coffee at some point and compare what we're doing on an activity tracking side of things as well, because it sounds like you guys are doing stuff that would be relevant to us as well.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to hear more about that gamification and the scoring mechanism that you're using, Rob.
More than happy to. No problem at all. No problem
Awesome.
at all.
Okay.
Good stuff, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much indeed.
Enjoy the rest of the session.
Everyone, take care.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.